I'm the Dimmitt. Welcome to the Dimmitt Memorial New Year's broadcast. I thought for the New Year's broadcast we should look at the events that made history in the year that we've just all together lived through. So I decided I would just start from right where I sit and look back in history. I looked back the first week and I found a show on NPR, National Public Radio, where they were interviewing the press secretary of the United States of America. The Cuban Missile Crisis came up. No banana. She did not know what the Cuban Missile Crisis was. This stopped me in my tracks. This is very significant. You see, the spokesman for the President of the United States of America should know what the Cuban Missile Crisis was. You see, there's something about knowing history that keeps us from repeating these things. But it didn't work here. I wonder first about this lady. She's very young, not bad looking, but young. Her not knowing this, perhaps one of the more significant things that happened in our history, could be because our schools don't teach very well. It's one thing it could be. And another thing it could be is people that write history books are old and they forget things and don't put them in the books. Another thing could be students in college today cheat. So learning history really isn't very important to them. And then the worst thought of all is that our news and our history is controlled. That's why events like the Kennedy assassination are not really going to be told to us until everybody that was alive when it happened is dead and in the grave. I always thought that a little suspicious. And I thought about this press secretary when she was asked this question, what she must have thought in her mind. The Cuban Missile Crisis. Perhaps John Kennedy was sitting in his office one day. Hello? Hello? Oh, yes, Fidel. Yes, I'm fine. Caroline's playing with the horses. What? Oh, you're out of missiles, Fidel. Certainly. Certainly, I will send you some missiles, but first I will have to get it past the brutal Congress. Thanks for calling, Fidel. I'll be sending those missiles. That is not what the Cuban Missile Crisis was about. I know what the Cuban Missile Crisis was about. 19, 20 years old when the Cuban Missile Crisis came about. I remember it well. I was going to be a Franciscan brother, and I was at that point, where you have to take final vows. You have temporary vows and then final vows. God gave me a vocation, I believe, to be a brother. I was a good teacher. I had an ability that was remarkable with young people. Why would God have given that to me if it wasn't what he wanted me to do? And I communicated very well. So I was discerning whether I wanted to be a brother, or I didn't really have any other thing that I wanted to be. Vows. Religious people take vows. In the Franciscan order, there's poverty, chastity, and obedience. When you're in your early 20s, these are hard things to say that you're going to follow for the rest of your life. We'll look at them. The vow of poverty, the Franciscan habit, which looks sort of like Friar Tuck, had no pockets, no need for money. It's a different kind of poor, by the way, than being really poor. If I needed money, Father Superior gave it to me. Obedience. I was a good boy. So obedience wasn't a problem. But that vow of chastity. That was the rough one. You know, when you're in the seminary and you're trying to live under those vows and your hormones are just raging, I had a lot of trouble. You see, celibacy is a little different than chastity. Today, religious people take celibacy. Celibacy basically means you're not going to get married. Chastity means nothing, no dirty thoughts, nothing like that. I mean, go for months. And then I'd be taking a shower. And I said, oh, that's dirty, I need to wash it. And the next thing, mortal sin. Doomed down to the depths of hell. You know, there's something really awkward about being a mortal sin and having to go to Mass at 4:30 in the morning. I mean, the Catholics will understand this. You have to find a priest. You have to go to confession. You know, in front of the entire school. If you don't go to confession and you can't receive communion, they know that you didn't rob a bank last night. It was bad. Am I getting sidetracked here? Oh, yes, so we're talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Yes. Well, anyway, I was discerning these things. And I had a girlfriend, and that's what Barbara was. It was a girlfriend. And I was home, and in the midst of this Cuban Missile Crisis, which I have to understand is at this time, the Soviet Union had missiles. The United States of America had missiles. Soviet Union had enough missiles to blow up every major city in the United States of America. The Soviet Union had missiles that were pointing at the United States of America. Children in the Soviet Union, children here in the United States, we grew up with those missiles pointed at us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was tense. But this particular night, in the midst of the Cuban Missile Crisis, Fidel Castro had the missiles. They were building the facilities. They were 90 miles from our shore. It was very tense. I was tense, so I went to a pastrami dip sandwich place. Awesome. I could do a whole show on pastrami dip sandwiches. I've never been able to find one of these. They used to be all over Los Angeles. But Barbara and I were contemplating this World War III that we felt was imminent, and anyone that lived at that point knew how close we were to World War III. And we talked about doing it. You know what? Barbara said, you know, we may not live through the night, Jer. We must do it tonight. And I thought about that vow of chastity. And I said, no, Barb, we can't do it. Well, there was no World War III. Barbara was killed in a car accident about a month and a half later. I don't think she ever did that. And I never had a chance to do it with Barbara. And I never took final vows as a Franciscan. But I'm glad that we had a very strong president who was able to stand up against the military who wanted to plunge us into a world war. A military that wanted to shoot those missiles. And the president said, no, I am the president of the United States and you will not shoot those missiles. We need a strong president like that today.